liturgical year of Dom Prosper Guéranger. August 19th, St. John Eudes, Confessor. St. John Eudes, forerunner of devotion both to the Sacred Heart and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, was born in 1601, sometime after France had been torn apart by the revolt of the Huguenots. The rebels were calmed, but relegated to western France by King Henry IV after he himself returned to the Catholic faith. It was in that region that this young saint spent his childhood, at Argentan in Normandy, and was educated with the Jesuits of Caen. The father of this firstborn of the family of solid and profound virtue had himself desired the sacerdotal life, and he did not long oppose John's desire to consecrate himself to God as a priest. At 18 years of age, St. John had already composed a treatise on voluntary abrogation, which his confessor obliged him to publish. He was ordained in Paris as a member of the recently founded French oratory of St. Philip Neri. His teachers there were Fathers de Burel and de Condren, two unsurpassed spiritual directors. The governing theme of his meditation, his preaching, and his writings was the importance of the redemptive incarnation of the Son of God through the intermediary of his Immaculate Mother. Controversy was not lacking in those days when the Mother of God had been relegated to a very secondary, if not insignificant, role by the Reformers, and St. John did not fear controversy. He chose to study both theology and what we would call debate as essential preparations for his callings. In those days, seminaries were scarce. Aspiring future priests themselves sought out the instruction they needed. At Caen, a pestilence broke out and soon decimated the populace, often deprived of spiritual assistance. John Eudes offered to care for them in person, and while the scourge lasted, slept outdoors in a field in an old barrel to protect his brothers in religion from contagion. In 1639, he was named Superior of the Oratory of Caen by Father de Condren, although the Superior General feared that office could interfere with his missions, from which they hoped for great renovation in western France. Nonetheless, from 1638 until 1642, St. John, with his brethren in religion, was engaged in preaching missions in the diocese of Bayeux and Lisieux, where the bishops encouraged him and soon were praising him highly. The fruits of these missions were rich and long-lived. Father Eudes was a follower of St. Vincent de Paul in his ardent desire to evangelize the poor folk, so long neglected, and it was to the people that the preaching of the Oratorian missionaries was addressed. Their missions lasted for several weeks. Otherwise, said St. John, we put a bandage on the wound, but do not heal it. Processions, hymns, little religious plays, special conferences for specific groups, organizations of leagues against duels and blasphemy, and visits to the sick occupied the missionaries' very full days. St. John Eudes left the oratory, a society of priests which he loved sincerely, like other founders who had been in a similar position, because he was called by God to break new ground in establishing a group of priests without religious vows, destined to occupy posts in the new seminaries of France. The Council of Trent had commanded these establishments everywhere, ordaining that priests be formed to head parishes and to establish in each of them a school. Already in 1658, St. John himself had founded 4 seminaries in Normandy, at Caen, Canonized, Lisieux, and Rouen. Before the revolution in France, the Eudes had accepted responsibility for 16 seminaries or minor seminaries. This required a foundation in depth in theology and all pastoral duties. Some of his former brethren turned against him when he left them, And he met obstacles also when founding in Cayenne a congregation of women to raise up poor girls led astray by ignorance or need. The Sisters of Our Lady of Charity, founded by St. John, parent body of the Good Shepherd nuns, have done an immense good in many countries. The Congregation of Jesus and Mary has sent missionary priests to several countries all over the world. St. John Eudes, who died in 1680, was beatified in 1909 by St. Pius X and canonized by Pius XI in 1925.